$350 million worth of gold lay hidden in darkness for more than 70 years, sealed away in a forgotten tunnel beneath the frozen Canadian wilderness. This wasn't just any gold. It was Nazi treasure, stolen from Europe during World War II, smuggled across the ocean, and buried deep underground by men who believed their secret would vanish with them. They were wrong. Decades later, one man stumbled upon the truth, and that man was Kevin Beets, the son of legendary gold miner Tony Beets. His discovery has shaken everything we thought we knew about the Klondike, the Yukon, and even North American history itself. The story began in the most unexpected way. Kevin wasn't out hunting treasure or exploring abandoned tunnels. He was simply cleaning out his late grandfather Wilhelm's old cabin, tucked away in the remote Yukon. It was routine family work, sorting through old belongings, moving furniture, and packing boxes. But hidden under a loose floorboard, Kevin found something that made his heart race. Beneath the dust and cobwebs was a sealed metal box. Inside were yellowed immigration papers, faded black and white photographs, and at the very bottom, a leather-bound journal. This journal contained something extraordinary, a hand-drawn map that changed Kevin's life forever. The map wasn't ordinary. It showed a complex underground tunnel system carved deep into Paradise Hill, a site officially declared tapped out in the 1940s. But there, at the bottom of the map, was a chilling note written in his grandfather's shaky handwriting. "They made me help dig it. God forgive me for what we buried there." Kevin froze. What had his grandfather meant? What had been buried beneath Paradise Hill? Curious and unsettled, Kevin began researching. He combed through old Yukon records, government archives, and mining documents. What he uncovered made the story even stranger. According to official files, a company called Northern Territories Extraction Limited had operated in Paradise Hill during the early 1940s. On paper, it looked legitimate, but the company had no clear ownership, no real financial backers, and after only 3 years, it disappeared entirely in 1945, the same year World War II ended. Even more suspicious, geological surveys of the area didn't match reality. Reports claimed Paradise Hill's soil was shallow, unfit for deep mining. Yet Wilhelm's notes described vast underground chambers, perfect for tunnels. Someone had deliberately filed false records. By this point, Kevin was convinced that his grandfather's map was not just the ramblings of an old man. It was evidence of a conspiracy, one that stretched back to the final days of World War II. He knew he had to see Paradise Hill for himself. In October 2024, Kevin packed his gear and made the journey. The Yukon wilderness was unforgiving. Dense forests, freezing winds, and terrain that hadn't been disturbed in decades made the trek difficult. But with him, Kevin carried something that his grandfather had never had: modern technology. He brought ground-penetrating radar to skim beneath the earth. Almost immediately, the machine lit up with signs of large, man-made chambers. What Wilhelm had drawn on his map was real. Kevin followed the markings carefully until his shovel hit something solid. The sound of metal echoed through the silent forest. He dug deeper and uncovered what looked like a rusted steel door buried in the soil. It was no ordinary door. It had been welded shut from the inside. Someone had gone to extreme lengths to make sure whatever was behind it would never see daylight again. Kevin faced a choice: walk away and leave the secret buried forever, or break through and discover what his grandfather had been haunted by. He chose the latter. Using industrial plasma torches, Kevin and his crew spent 3 days cutting through the seal. Sparks lit up the night sky as the wilderness echoed with the hiss of burning steel. Finally, with one last push, the heavy door creaked open. Cold, stale air rushed out, carrying with it the metallic scent of something ancient and unsettling. Kevin shined his headlamp inside. The darkness seemed endless, like the open mouth of a beast. But as he stepped forward, the beam revealed something astonishing. The tunnel walls were carved with surgical precision, supported by steel beams that still bore German manufacturing stamps from the World War II era. Electrical conduits lined the ceilings. This wasn't the work of desperate miners. This was military-grade engineering built to last, built to hide something. Deeper inside, Kevin found a chamber the size of a warehouse. And there, stacked neatly in rows along the walls, were thousands of gold bars, each one stamped with the Nazi eagle and swastika. 70 years of silence ended in that moment. Kevin realized he had uncovered one of the largest Nazi treasure vaults ever found in North America. But this was only the beginning. Kevin stood frozen in that underground chamber, his headlamp bouncing off the gleaming stacks of gold. Each bar weighed around 25 pounds, stamped with the insignia of Nazi Germany. The sight was overwhelming. This wasn't just wealth, it was stolen history, the plunder of millions of innocent lives. For a moment, Kevin couldn't move. He thought about his grandfather, Wilhelm, and the nightmares that must have tormented him for decades after helping bury this dark fortune. But as Kevin explored further, he realized the first chamber was only the beginning. His grandfather's journal map had marked 7 more chambers hidden deeper within the tunnel system. Kevin followed the passages, each intersection branching like a maze, until he reached the second chamber. When he opened the heavy steel door, his jaw dropped again. Here, instead of gold, the walls were lined with crates and sealed wooden boxes. Kevin carefully pried one open and gasped. Inside were priceless works of art, paintings, sculptures, and artifacts known from history books to have vanished during the Nazi looting of Europe. Some were museum pieces ripped from galleries in Paris and Vienna. Others were family heirlooms stolen from Jewish homes before their owners were deported to concentration camps. Kevin realized he wasn't just looking at treasure. He was standing inside one of the largest hidden collections of looted art ever found on the continent. The third chamber told an even darker story. Here, Kevin found piles of personal belongings, jewelry, watches, silverware, and family keepsakes, all meticulously sorted with Nazi efficiency. These weren't random objects. They were the possessions of countless families who had been stripped of everything before being sent to their deaths. Kevin picked up a child's toy, its paint faded but still intact, and felt a chill run through him. This wasn't treasure. This was evidence of human suffering, carefully hidden away in the frozen north. But it was the fourth chamber that changed everything. Inside, Kevin discovered sealed containers filled with documents, files that revealed the shocking truth about how this vault came to be. These papers detailed a conspiracy far larger than Kevin had imagined. It wasn't just desperate Nazis hiding stolen wealth. This had been a coordinated operation involving high-ranking Canadian officials, mining executives, and a network of Nazi sympathizers. The documents included letters exchanged between Nazi officers and Canadian cabinet ministers. During the 1940s, there were mining permits issued under false names, financial records showing bribes paid to government officials, and detailed maps of other suspected hiding places. Kevin's heart pounded as he read through them. This wasn't just a local secret. It was evidence of a decades-long cover-up that reached the highest levels of power. The files even revealed that the bribes continued long after the war ended. Payments were documented up until 1953, the very year Wilhelm had drawn his secret map and hidden it in a cabin. Kevin realized something crucial: his grandfather had not been alone in his guilt. Other collaborators had also wanted out. That final round of payments in 1953 wasn't just hush money. It was severance, a way to silence those who wanted to escape the conspiracy. That was when the tunnels were sealed, welded shut, and erased from history. Kevin finally understood why his grandfather had written those haunting words, "God forgive me." For what we buried there, Wilhelm had carried the weight of that secret for decades. And now, standing in those chambers, Kevin carried it too. The value of the treasure was staggering. Experts later estimated the gold alone to be worth $350 million. But Kevin knew the real worth wasn't measured in money. This was about justice, about righting wrongs that had remained hidden for nearly a century. Kevin faced the hardest decision of his life. He could keep the discovery secret, quietly remove the gold, and make his family one of the richest in North America. Or he could expose everything, returning the stolen treasures, giving families a chance to reclaim their history, and risking the wrath of those who had kept this secret buried for so long. The answer came to him when he opened a box in the seventh chamber. Inside were personal letters, photographs, and drawings taken from Jewish families before they were murdered. Among them was a child's crayon sketch of a house, signed with a name and date. Kevin stared at it for a long time. That child had likely never survived the camps. Their only trace of existence was this small piece of paper, hidden underground with piles of stolen gold. In that moment, Kevin knew he couldn't treat this as treasure. It was a graveyard. It was evidence. It was history crying out for justice. He decided the treasure had to be returned. The gold would go back to rightful heirs. The artwork would be restored to museums. The personal belongings would be given to Holocaust memorial organizations. And the documents, files that revealed the shocking truth about how this vault came to be. These papers detailed a conspiracy far larger than Kevin had imagined. It wasn't just desperate Nazis hiding stolen wealth. This had been a coordinated operation involving high-ranking Canadian officials, mining executives, and a network of Nazi sympathizers. The documents included letters exchanged between Nazi officers and Canadian cabinet ministers. During the 1940s, there were mining permits issued under false names, financial records showing bribes paid to government officials, and detailed maps of other suspected hiding places. Kevin's heart pounded as he read through them. This wasn't just a local secret. It was evidence of a decades-long cover-up that reached the highest levels of power. The files even revealed that the bribes continued long after the war ended. Payments were documented up until 1953, the very year Wilhelm had drawn his secret map and hidden it in the cabin. Kevin realized something crucial: his grandfather had not been alone in his guilt. Other collaborators had also wanted out. That final round of payments in 1953 wasn't just hush money. It was severance, a way to silence those who wanted to escape the conspiracy. That was when the tunnels were sealed, welded shut, and erased from history. Kevin finally understood why his grandfather had written those haunting words. God forgive me. For what we buried there, Wilhelm had carried the weight of that secret for decades. And now, standing in those chambers, Kevin carried it too. The value of the treasure was staggering. Experts later estimated the gold alone to be worth $350 million. But Kevin knew the real worth wasn't measured in money. This was about justice, about righting wrongs that had remained hidden for nearly a century. Kevin faced the hardest decision of his life. He could keep the discovery secret, quietly remove the gold, and make his family one of the richest in North America. Or he could expose everything, returning the stolen treasures, giving families a chance to reclaim their history, and risking the wrath of those who had kept the secret buried for so long. The answer came to him when he opened a box in the 7th chamber. Inside were personal letters, photographs, and drawings taken from Jewish families before they were murdered. Among them was a child's crayon sketch of a house, signed with a name and date. Kevin stared at it for a long time. That child had likely never survived the camps. Their only trace of existence was this small piece of paper, hidden underground with piles of stolen gold. In that moment, Kevin knew he couldn't treat this as treasure. It was a graveyard. It was evidence. It was history crying out for justice. He decided the treasure had to be returned. The gold would go back to rightful heirs. The artwork would be restored to museums. The personal belongings would be given to Holocaust memorial organizations. And the documents, those would be made public, no matter how many powerful people wanted them destroyed. When Kevin finally revealed his discovery, the world was stunned. News spread like wildfire. Historians, survivors, and governments scrambled to verify the find. Holocaust organizations confirmed the authenticity of the artifacts. Art experts identified paintings and sculptures that had been missing since the 1940s, and the gold, stamped with Nazi insignia, was undeniable proof of one of the greatest hidden treasure vaults ever discovered. But the political fallout was explosive. The documents Kevin uncovered implicated Canadian officials in helping Nazis smuggle and hide stolen treasure. Some of the men named in the files were still alive, now elderly, but suddenly facing potential prosecution for war crimes. The Canadian government at first tried to downplay the discovery, suggesting the documents might be forged, but independent experts quickly confirmed their authenticity. International pressure mounted. The United Nations called for hearings. Swiss banks launched investigations into accounts that had been used to funnel money into Canada. During the 1940s and 50s, Holocaust survivor groups demanded full transparency. Kevin found himself at the center of a firestorm bigger than anything he had imagined. Yet in the middle of the chaos, something beautiful began to happen. Survivors and families started to come forward, identifying stolen treasures from the vault. A 92-year-old woman named Sarah Goldstein recognized a painting recovered from the 2nd chamber. It had once hung in her family's home in Vienna before the Nazis deported them to Auschwitz. Sarah was the only survivor from her family. When she saw the painting again, she wept. "I thought I would die without ever seeing my mother's face again," she said. That painting was the last gift her father had given her mother before the Nazis came. Stories like Sarah's multiplied. Families reunited with heirlooms they never thought they would see again. Museums restored collections that had been incomplete for decades. Synagogues received back religious artifacts stolen during the Holocaust. Each object carried memories, history, and the dignity of lives that had been stolen. Kevin realized his discovery wasn't about him, or even about his family. It was about healing wounds that had been opened for 80 years. But not everyone was pleased. Kevin began receiving threats. There were still people who wanted these secrets buried, who feared what the documents would expose. Powerful families, old institutions, and hidden networks suddenly felt the ground shifting beneath them. Kevin knew he had made enemies, but he also knew he had chosen the right path. The weeks following the discovery were a blur for Kevin. Reporters camped outside his cabin. Historians begged for access to the tunnels, and international agencies demanded that the treasure be cataloged and secured. Kevin, who had always lived a quiet life in the remote wilderness, now found himself thrust into the spotlight of global history. At first, the Canadian government tried to take control of the entire situation. Officials arrived by helicopter, declaring that the treasure was a matter of national interest and must be secured by state forces. But Kevin refused to hand it over blindly. He insisted that independent observers and international Jewish organizations be present. He had seen the documents, the bribes, the corruption. He knew that if the government took control in secret, much of the treasure might disappear again, swallowed by greed, hidden in vaults, or sold to the highest bidder. This act of defiance made Kevin a hero to some and an enemy to others. Survivors praised him for his courage, while powerful institutions branded him as reckless. But Kevin stood firm. He remembered the faces in those photographs, the toys, the family keepsakes. He couldn't betray them a second time. When the vault was finally opened to the world under international supervision, the scale of the discovery stunned everyone. Chamber after chamber was carefully cataloged. The gold was weighed, photographed, and stored in secured facilities. The artwork was identified by experts, with some pieces immediately recognized as long-lost masterpieces worth hundreds of millions. Personal belongings were handled with reverence, many of them later displayed in Holocaust museums around the world. The documents proved to be the most explosive find of all. Historians pored over them, uncovering details that rewrote chapters of World War II history. It became clear that Canada had not only provided refuge to fleeing Nazis after the war, but had also actively collaborated in hiding their stolen wealth. Mining companies, desperate for wartime profits, had accepted Nazi gold in exchange for supplies. Politicians had turned a blind eye in return for bribes. The scandal shook Canada to its core. Parliament was forced to open an inquiry. Elderly politicians, once celebrated as national heroes, suddenly found themselves under investigation. Families that had grown rich off mining empires faced questions about where their seed money had come from. The press began to call it Canada's hidden war, a dark shadow cast across a nation that had long prided itself on its role in defeating Hitler. Kevin, meanwhile, found himself torn between relief and fear. He had done the right thing, but at what cost? His quiet life was gone forever. He received letters of gratitude from families around the world, but he also began to notice strange cars parked near his cabin, anonymous phone calls at night, and threatening messages slipped under his door. Not everyone wanted this story told. Not everyone wanted these truths revealed. One evening, as Kevin was reviewing some of the files in his cabin, he came across a letter that made his blood run cold. It was dated 1951 and addressed to a senior Canadian official. The letter mentioned not just the vault he had discovered, but several others. It suggested that the vault in the north was only one of a network of hidden chambers across Canada, each containing stolen Nazi wealth, hidden with the help of corrupt allies. If that letter was true, Kevin had only scratched the surface of a much larger conspiracy. The gold and artifacts in his grandfather's vault might be worth hundreds of millions, but the other vaults could contain billions. The thought was staggering. Kevin debated whether to reveal this new clue to the world. He knew that once he did, he would unleash a hunt that could destabilize entire regions. Governments, treasure hunters, and criminal organizations would all begin searching, desperate to claim their share. At the same time, he also knew that the truth couldn't stay hidden. If his grandfather's vault had remained undiscovered for 70 years, then how many more secrets still slept beneath the Canadian wilderness? The pressure on Kevin grew heavier with each passing day. Religious leaders praised him for exposing the vault, but secretive groups, some with deep political ties, began to turn against him. They whispered that Kevin had betrayed his own country by handing over the treasure to international organizations. He was accused of treason in certain political circles, branded as unpatriotic. But Kevin held fast to one truth: this treasure never belonged to Canada. It belonged to the victims and their families. Still, the threats intensified. One night, his cabin was broken into. Nothing was stolen, but his grandfather's journal was torn to shreds and scattered across the floor. It was a warning. Whoever was behind it wanted Kevin to know that he was being watched, and that his digging into the past had consequences. But the intimidation only fueled Kevin's resolve. He began working closely with international historians and survivor groups, digitizing every single document he had found in the vault. His goal was simple: make the information indestructible. If he were silenced, the truth would still spread across the world. Months later, a massive exhibition was opened in New York, showcasing some of the recovered artifacts, paintings, and personal items. Survivors and their descendants attended in tears, finally reclaiming pieces of their past. For the first time in decades, families who had lost everything were able to hold something once stolen from them. A ring, a book, a photograph, small items, but priceless in meaning. And through it all, Kevin remained a quiet figure in the background. He never sought fame or fortune. He never tried to profit from what he had uncovered. He simply carried the weight of his grandfather's secret and passed it to the world, where it belonged. Yet the question remained, what about the other vaults? Were they real, or just rumor? Some historians believed the letter Kevin found was authentic. Others suspected it was a decoy, designed to mislead anyone who stumbled upon the documents. But treasure hunters around the globe didn't care. Suddenly, northern Canada became the focus of expeditions, metal detectors, and secret digs. Kevin had lit a fire he could no longer control. In the months that followed the New York exhibition, Kevin's life became a whirlwind of interviews, academic conferences, and endless questions. Yet despite the worldwide recognition, he remained restless. The letter about other vaults gnawed at him day and night. Each time he tried to ignore it, he would remember the look in Sarah Goldstein's eyes when she saw her family's painting returned. If one vault could bring that much healing, what might the others contain? How many more families might be able to reclaim fragments of their past? So, Kevin returned to his grandfather's journal, piecing together the scraps that had survived the break-in. At first glance, it seemed only to detail the vault he had already found. But on closer inspection, Kevin noticed something he had missed before: tiny notations in the margins. Single letters and numbers that didn't fit the rest of the handwriting. They looked like coordinates, scattered and incomplete. Kevin realized his grandfather may have left behind more than just one map. Determined to uncover the truth, Kevin reached out to a small group of trusted historians and researchers. He shared the suspicious letter and the odd notations. Together, they began cross-referencing wartime records, mining permits, and declassified intelligence files. Slowly, a pattern began to emerge. Certain abandoned mines in northern Canada lined up with the coordinates. Each site had been active during the 1940s and mysteriously shut down in the early 1950s, the same time Wilhelm had ended his involvement. The idea was staggering. If the pattern was correct, there could be at least 3 more vaults buried in remote Canadian wilderness, each filled with stolen Nazi wealth. But unlike the vault Kevin had found, these new locations were harder to reach. One lay beneath an abandoned silver mine surrounded by sheer cliffs and frozen rivers. Another was rumored to be under a collapsed tunnel system, dangerous and unstable. The third was marked near a lake so remote it could only be reached by air. Kevin knew he couldn't take on this mission alone. The first vault had been protected by layers of steel and secrecy, and even then, it had nearly cost him his safety. These new vaults would likely be even more dangerous. He decided to form a small, secretive team of explorers, archaeologists, and engineers. He swore them to silence, warning that if word got out, they would be swarmed by treasure hunters, mercenaries, and even governments eager to claim the wealth. Their first expedition targeted the abandoned silver mine. The journey took weeks, battling freezing temperatures and treacherous terrain. When they finally reached the site, Kevin felt the same eerie energy he had felt in his grandfather's vault. Rusted machinery lay scattered around, frozen in time. Old mining carts, collapsed shafts, and the faint outline of German writing carved into a rock face confirmed that the Nazis had been there. Deep inside the mine, the team stumbled upon something chilling: a sealed steel door identical to the one Kevin had opened months earlier. The realization hit them all at once. The letter had been true. Another vault was here, buried beneath layers of ice and rock. When they managed to pry it open, the air that escaped was stale and suffocating, untouched for nearly 80 years. Inside, the chamber revealed a different kind of treasure. This time, it wasn't gold or art. It was weapons. Crates upon crates of advanced technology, experimental rifles, prototypes of aircraft designs, and even blueprints for weapons that had never been built. Kevin realized they had uncovered not just stolen wealth, but a secret Nazi arsenal hidden away for a future war that never came. The discovery sent shockwaves through the team. If these weapons had been revealed during the war, history might have taken a different path.